Story about the Public Enterprises Director General defending the SAA's business rescue processes. He says it was necessary to save the airline and jobs. Khutatso Tlakudi received a memorandum from disgruntled workers earlier today. The workers say they've not been upskilled as promised. Tlakudi says lack of funding is one of the reasons the program has failed to deliver.
This was a model program from our side, SDP, and this was driven by the need to ensure that we can reserve as many jobs as possible and create a room for when the airline grows that we have talent immediately available to come in and obviously be employed at SAA. But we always knew that the airline was not in a position to be able to fund that we have to find funds elsewhere. And that's why we had the Department of Higher Education as well as the Department of Labor were roped in as part of the interministerial effort to find solutions to this program, which will tell you that we have in the original obviously the 1,000 people employed there and sustained through some of the programs that these departments run through, for instance, the CCMA as well as the National Skills Fund, to ensure that it has not worked out as we had hoped, because there are criteria that are in place for you to be able to access that fund. And we'll provide a response to yourself, as I'm aware that SA has also provided a response in the letter to your leadership as to why the TLS fund itself where it is. That's why the program is not working. But we still believe that it is a program that we should really work together within government and obviously with organized labor to ensure that it succeeds. Because it really sets up what is possible, because we cannot continue to be building jobs as we have done.
Now, more than 200 South African Airways staff members will reportedly be let go by the end of March. The South African Cabin Crew Association and the National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa, NUMSA, picketed earlier today the offices of the Public Enterprises Department in Pretoria. Let's get some reaction and a bit of analysis on this from the editor of SA Flyer magazine, Guy Leitch. Guy, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. There are two things here. You've got a retrenchment process that the unions are referring to, that more than 200 workers are set to lose their jobs by the end of March. And then you've got this business rescue process, which is taking such a long time to take place, with all kinds of explanations now, as we've heard now from the Public Enterprises Department's Khutatso Tlakudi. I mean, which is causing what, in your understanding, Guy?
Yeah, hi, Dan. Nice to be with you. Well, actually, the current problem with the supposedly 220 workers being retrenched is a real mess, because it's a legacy of the business rescue process. And let me just correct you and point out that the business rescue process ended in September last year. So the airline is, back on its own, flying by itself again, at least in theory, and we can talk a bit more about that. But the 220 employees, well, we don't even know that they're properly employees. These were employees who were let go as part of the retrenchment process earlier under the business rescue process of cutting the staff from 3,000 employees or even 5,000 employees down to 1,000. So these are staff that were let go, but then were encouraged to develop their skills in the meanwhile with this TLS process, this training process. And now SAA, and well, sorry, we can't continue because they haven't been paid by the CETA for it, or the CCMA, or whoever was going to pay for it. And we can't continue this any longer, so we're going to have to let these people go. That's where that story comes from. So
there's 220 odd employees you're talking about were let go as part of the it's a legacy issue. They were let go as part of the earlier agreement, and they should have been dealt with earlier. But that has not happened. So who should be responsible for them now? One of them telling our reporter, Heidi Jokos, earlier that they are still employees as far as they are concerned of SAA.
Well, that's the interesting point, that they feel it necessary to make the point that they are still employees, and yet in many senses they are not, because they were kept on for further training without any additional benefits like pension fund and so on. So I think it's to be up to the courts to decide whether they are still employees and whether they have the rights of employees, or whether this was just a temporary scheme to help reskill them if they weren't able to get their jobs back.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the upskilling, you've mentioned there that they were supposed also to be given new skills or upskilled. We just played the bite there before you from Mr. Tlakudi of the Public Enterprises Department, and he was saying that one of the issues was, of course, the reasons that the program has failed to deliver is lack of funding.
Well, yes, and I mean, SAA is right in saying that it's not its fault that there isn't any funding. It was supposed to have been provided by the TITA, or by the DPE and not by SAA itself. So I think that the one thing, at least you can say in SAA's favour in this whole mess, is that it is running a very tight ship and making sure that no money is spent that it doesn't have to be spent or wasn't supposed to have been spent, and that includes this TLS scheme.
Now, so in terms of SACA and NUMSA, taking the memorandum to the Department of Public Enterprises is the right move. They should not be targeting SAA. Am I correct?
I'm not sure that I understand the full reasoning of your question there. The fact of the matter is that it's interesting that SACA and NUMSA have taken it up on behalf of these TLS employees who may not even be members of the union. But they've often, the unions, have been opposed to the scheme right from the start, where the SAA argued that it was an attempt to give the employees who were losing their jobs a soft landing. And now it hasn't worked out that way because of a number of broken promises. The unions are correct in pointing out that it is not okay that SAA hasn't provided financial statements, and that's why they haven't been able to raise the funds. So the unions are saying it is SAA's fault. It's just one huge big mess, which I'm afraid will be up to the courts to decide.
Yeah. So you think it's only a legal route that will assist the workers to find a solution to this, or could there be something else different? Now, SAA is running a tight ship under the new leadership, under the new management, as you've pointed out, Guy. Well,
on the one hand, that's what they're saying. Thomas Kokolo issued a very upbeat statement. Thomas Kokolo is the interim CEO. He issued a very upbeat statement about 10 days ago, saying that SAA was performing better than expected, better than its budgeted numbers, and so on. And I was very pleased to hear that. I elected to believe him. However, shortly after that, maybe it was to soften the public up, there was an announcement that a further 3.5 billion rand would be made available by Pravin Gordhan. However, unfortunately, that money, they were quick to point out, had already been allocated in terms of the business rescue process. So they were saying, well, it's not new money. But then, just quietly, at the end of last week on Friday, we were having looked through the minutes of the Parliamentary Standing Committee. And buried in there's another 2.7 billion rand, and that certainly has no claim to having been allocated before. So it looks like the SAA is in fact burning money at the tremendous rate of about 700 million rand a month, which is almost as bad as it was doing when it was losing R1 billion a year. It's 10 times as bad as it was when it was losing R1 billion a year for the 2005 to 2015 period. There's a lot of concern about how long SAA can sustain, and even if it does get the 3 billion rand, which will be slowly paid out by the Takatsa consortium, it would now appear that this is not remotely enough to keep it going.
What about this strategic equity partner that was referred to? I think, was it the president in the State of the Nation address, or was it the budget speech? I'm just confused.
I think it was the budget speech. And
yes, what about that?
It's a $3 billion question, isn't it? They're assuring us that the deal is going ahead, that the actual contracts have now been signed to sell 51% of the airline to the Takatsa consortium. And it's long overdue. It shouldn't have taken this long. But unfortunately, there's still a devil in the detail because the deal is now dependent on regulatory approval. And and two of the key approvals that it needs are approvals from the Air Services Licensing Councils. Now, Minister Mbalula, the Minister of Transport, hasn't in fact even constituted one of these councils. So there's no one to give the approvals. Who knows how long that'll take? And on top of it, there's an approval required from the Civil Aviation Authority, and that approval can take 1 to 2 years. Now, it shouldn't be that case this time around because it's just a change of name or ownership, if you like. But still, there's a long way to go yet before this deal gets finally put to bed and SAA can see any money from the Takatsa Consortium.
Thank you very much for your time and insights. The guy Leitch, the editor of SA Flyer magazine, just talk about the latest developments, the SAA.